Thank you, Hal. Good morning, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of the North Hills. Whatever the faith and traditions of your past, we welcome you. Whatever your theological stance, we welcome you. Whomever you are and whomever you love, we welcome you. Wherever you come from, whatever your journey has been, we welcome you, the whole of you. My name is Jeff Coleman, and I'm the lay leader today. Our Sunday services are as diverse as we are, so if you're visiting our church for the first time today, please come back again several times before drawing any conclusions about us. Newcomers and guests are always welcome to participate in any of our church activities. If we have any newcomers or guests with us this morning, we invite you to introduce yourselves. If you would like to do so, please raise your hand and someone will speedily bring you a microphone. Oh,
My name is Dick Rice, and I just moved here from Hells Canyon, Oregon.
welcome. Any other newcomers or guests? All right, well, thank you. Please join us for coffee hour following the service. Our Connections team would also like to welcome guests to the Connections Center in the back of the sanctuary. After enjoying your coffee and snacks, please return to this room and meet with our team members to have any of your questions answered. It is good to be together, both in person and virtually.
Good morning, everyone. It is so good to be with you. My name is Michael DeSantis. I am the guest worship leader today, and since I'm a newcomer, I'll give a bit of an introduction really quickly. So I grew up in Pittsburgh. I grew up actually in the North Hills, and I am an aspirant for UU ministry. I just graduated from seminary at Union Theological Seminary in New York, so I'm spending the summer in Pittsburgh right now before I head out to Denver, Colorado, where I'll be doing my ministry internship. And it is so good to be with you all this morning. And I have a question for you as we begin this worship service. Do you feel the Spirit? Do you feel the Spirit glistening as the sun bathes itself in the hemming and the hawing of the Monongahela, gathering itself as those waters meet the Allegheny, giving birth and rebirth every second to the Ohio? Do you feel the Spirit whistling as the wind rushes through the white oaks and the eastern hemlocks and the red maples? Do you feel the Spirit sticking to your skin on these hot summer days in western PA? Do you feel the Spirit draping itself over the land at dusk, calling out in the incessant chirping of the cicadas, flickering in and out of view as the fireflies illuminate the early evening hours? Do you feel the Spirit glimmering in the eyes of the grandmotherly figure ahead of you in the checkout line at Giant Eagle, searching for you in the frightened face of a child who has fallen off their bike, who will get back on and ride off only after sheltering in the safety of your arms, training wheels off for the first time? For them or for you, who's to say? Do you feel the Spirit coursing through your veins, racing through your thoughts, lingering just a little while longer on your lips as you tuck that child in for the night? My friends, do you feel the Spirit? Life is the Spirit. Faith is the Spirit. Hope is the Spirit. Love is the Spirit. All of us are the Spirit. Come now, let us give ourselves to that Spirit and let us worship together.
The flaming chalice is a symbol of our faith as we join with other UU churches and fellowships in this familiar ritual. As we share the light of this chalice in our sanctuary, we also welcome those of you participating at home to light a chalice. Our chalice reading is titled, "Does the Match Love the Wick?" by Kelly Weissman Asbruth Jackson. Does the match love the wick? Does the wick love the wax or the air it consumes? Yes, without question. To meet together, to burn together, to change together, the pieces of the candle must love each other, though not necessarily wisely and not necessarily well. Please rise in body or in spirit as you are willing and able, and join in singing our opening hymn, Gather the Spirit. That's number 347 in the gray hymnal, and of course the words will also appear on the screens.
Which today is the book Little Tree by Lauren Wall. Hello, friends. Once there was a little tree filled with little leaves, who was surrounded by other little trees who had little leaves of their own. In the heat of the long summer days, little tree's leaves kept him cool. The squirrels would climb on his branches to play. The mourning dove landed in him and sang her fluty song. The little tree was sure to grow up big and strong. Autumn arrived and cool winds filled the air. The wind tickled the little tree as it passed through his branches and ruffled his leaves. Do we have any ticklish folks here? The wind's tickling the little tree, and the air grew cold, and the leaves on all of the trees changed color, becoming yellow, red, and orange. Then, one by one, the trees began to drop their leaves. But not little tree. He just hugged his leaves tight. Have you all ever had something that you hugged really tight that you never want to let go of? No? I know I had a blanket that I hugged very tight when I grew up in the North Hills, and it had to accompany to the North End Library and just about everywhere else when I was here. Hello, little tree, said Mrs. Squirrel. You're supposed to drop your leaves now. But little tree was unsure. What would he do without his leaves? Winter came. What are you doing with all your leaves on? Asked the doe. Little tree just kept hugging his leaves tight. Springtime arrived, and the little forest burst into life again. The other trees grew bright new leaves. The squirrels played in their branches. There we go. There we are. Little tree could hear the mourning dove singing her fluty song. The seasons continued to come and go. Little tree, quacked a duckling, your leaves are brown. Are you feeling sick? A fox said, little tree, it's autumn. It's time for you to drop your leaves. Can you do it? Ready. 1, 2. But little tree just hugged his leaves tight. And around the forest grew and grew and grew. One summer, little tree could no longer feel the sunlight. The squirrels played high above on the broad, tall trees. And the mourning dove sang so far away that he could hardly hear the fluty song. Autumn came again. Leaves began to blanket the ground. Little tree looked up at the other trees, at their branches reaching high into the sky. He remembered when the trees had all been his size. And then he let go. As his last leaf floated to the ground for the first time, little tree felt the cold of winter. But in time, we see him getting bigger and bigger across the panels here. In time, something happened. Once, there was a little tree. The end. And our little tree here is not so little anymore. We see the squirrels playing in this big, strong tree that's joined by the other big, strong trees. All right, and now we're going to sing our children out. Thank you, friends.
Good morning. First off, if you look in the program, I'm not TBD. I'm Chris Hill with the Lay Pastoral Care Team. Sorry, it just reached out to me. During our service, we create this sacred space for sharing within our community. It's a time to share significant life passages with the congregation so you can be held in loving care. I'll be reading the joys and sorrows this morning, and Ruth Horowitz will be placing a stone representing each joy or sorrow in the sand. The sand represents our congregation supporting our sorrows and lifting up our joys. We have a combination joy and maybe concern today from Beth Sack. Mike and I celebrated our 25th anniversary this past week. I know this will embarrass him, but I have to share this joy because I couldn't be happier. To Beth and Mike, we say, we share in your joy. We now place one more stone in the sand for all the joys and sorrows that exist in our hearts but remain unspoken today. From far and near, please say with me our caring words. Let us hold in our circle of caring each person here. Let us hold in our hearts those who are unable to be with us today. Let us hold in our memories those who have moved on. Let us find comfort in knowing that we are not alone.
And now, as we continue to collectively hold the joys and the sorrows shared, as well as all those silent prayers that live deep in our hearts or just behind our lips, would you all join me now in a spirit of reflective meditation? I invite you to find as comfortable a position for your body as you can, letting yourself relax into this space of community and companionship. Breathe normally in and out as your body allows. If it feels safe and if it helps, you can close your eyes. Roll your shoulders back. Unclench your jaw. Do what your body allows, what your body can to relax yourself, for this is a time for stillness and quiet. Today, I want to invite you all on a bit of an imaginative reflection. I want to invite you all to sit with a scene and to discern what insights it might have. I know this type of imagery reflection isn't for everyone, so if your heart and your mind wander elsewhere, that's okay. I trust that you are getting what you need out of this space, and we are with you in it. I want to invite all of us to imagine a typical day from childhood, from our childhood. Just a normal day. Not a particularly special day, neither the best day nor the worst day that you had as a kid or as a teenager. Just a regular, typical day. Where are you on this day? What is the setting? Imagine it. Bring it to mind. Put yourself back in that space. And in this space, what are you doing? What are you doing on this typical childhood day? How are you spending your time? You can journey through the day if you want, from the beginning to the end. As you're going through this day, who is with you? Who are your companions? Friends, family, neighbors? What's your relationship like to them? Call these people to mind. Feel what feelings they bring up for you. Joy, sadness, a mix of everything. Now turn your attention to this little you, this younger version of yourself, this younger you. What does it feel like to be this younger you? What is it like to be a child or a teenager again? How is this little you, this younger version of yourself, similar to who you are now? How are they different from who you are today? I want you to gently lean into those differences, noticing them, noticing how they make you feel. As we prepare to end this reflection, I want to ask, are any of these differences things that you'd like to bring back into your life? Things that make you feel safe, nourished? If there are, breathe them in. Breathe them in. And are there any parts that you need to let go of? To let go of, to be able to come back to who you are today, to this person you've grown into. Breathe those parts out. Breathe out all you need to let go. Let them go. Let them go. And now, as we close out this reflection, just extend a word of gratitude to this little you who got you where you are, who didn't know all you know, who hadn't experienced all you've experienced, but who had an important part in making you you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Now I invite you all to come back as you're ready. So we have two readings today. The first is by the retired UU minister, Reverend Mark Bellatini, I should say, and it's entitled, "For Religion to Be Significant." For religion to be significant, It has to provide more than the comforts of community. It also has to provide opportunities for deepening, for what I call spiritual growth, and for the casting down of false images and stereotypes which hurt us all. A good religion has to open us to the real diversity of our modern world. For our work as liberal religious people is not to be competitive with others and to find ways to supersede others, but rather to find ways to supersede ourselves, to grow beyond our limitations and our constrictive boundaries, each and every one of us. Diversity, you see, must not end up being some sort of feel-good slogan, a word that we keep in our back pocket to make us feel like we're broad-minded. Diversity is a gift. But it cannot be a gift unless it is received. Unless it is received and it is only received when there are hands and hearts open enough to receive it. And the opening of fists into welcoming hands and welcoming hearts, that is our spiritual work. Our second reading is by Mary Oliver, the unofficial gospel writer of Unitarian Universalism, and it's entitled In Blackwater Woods. Look, the trees are turning their own bodies into pillars of light, are giving off the rich fragrance of cinnamon and fulfillment. The long tapers of cattails are bursting and floating away over the blue shoulders of the ponds. And every pond, no matter what its name is nameless now. Every year, everything I have ever learned in my lifetime leads back to this. The fires and the black rivers of loss, whose other side is salvation, whose meaning none of us will ever know. To live in this world, you must be able to do three things. To love what is mortal, to hold it against your bones, knowing your own life depends on it, and when the time comes to let it go, to let it go. And now I'm going to ask you all to continue contemplating these readings as we stay seated and sing our musical response, Where Do We Come From? It's number 1003 in the Teal hymnal, it's a round. So it's a round. So we're gonna sing this first yellow part together, and then I'm gonna cue in sections. So then I'm gonna cue in from my left to right. So this way, yes. That would be fantastic. I would love help.
I know other people in the choir are here.
Some other choir people, come forward, come down. This is... Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? And also, how do we get to where we're going? What will this journey require? I hope it's not around. And who will join us along the way? These are some big questions, my friends. These are perhaps the very questions of life. They're also questions that our UU faith is wrestling with right now as we try to determine what the next chapter of this great faith tradition is going to be. So today, I'm going to invite us to reflect on the nature of spiritual growth. Reflect on our spiritual journeys, both personal and also in communities like this one in the UU Church of the North Hills. And I want us to reflect on the ways that spiritual growth requires us to make changes, to lean into new ways of living, new ways that help us live out our values more fully, which necessarily means letting go of some of the old ways. Where do we come from? Well, for me, as I said earlier, it's not all that far from here. I grew up less than 3 miles from here as the crow flies. It's about a 9-minute drive for those of you who are Google Maps people. And it was in McCandless, in the neighborhood that's right across from McKnight Crossing, or from McCandless Crossing, which was not there when I was a kid. I grew up through second grade in this little ranch house. And it had such a Pittsburgh yard because it had a big old hill in the front yard that sloped down to the road. I'm seeing some nodding. I think this is familiar to some folks around here. And in that sloped front yard, there were these 3 massive eastern hemlock trees. And underneath were a massive bed of dirt and needles that my twin and I would play on all the time. We'd push around these yellow Tonka trucks, we'd make stick forts, and we'd hold court and have little tea parties with our very large family of stuffed animals. That little dirt and needle pad under those trees became a magical space for me, one that I would now call a sacred space, a space where I felt safe and protected, cocooned under those strong trunks and those soft needles, and bathed in gentle sunlight that shone through and was softened by the trees. And so under those 3 large trees, with all of their spaciousness, I could lean into my wildest dreamings. Even now, when I am asked to remember my childhood or to think of a place that feels like home, it's those trees that I think about. This began a fondness for evergreen trees that lasts to today. If any of you are ever out in the woods with me, as some of my family who's here has been, you'll usually see me do a little ritual early on. Whenever I spot the first hemlock tree, which you can tell by they have those little tiny green needles, and they have with 2 little white lines underneath them, I'll walk up to it slowly, and I'll grab a low-hanging branch, and I'll pull it near, and I'll say, "Hello, friend." Stereotypical UU person here. And this fondness, it followed me out west after I graduated from college. After I graduated from college, I did an AmeriCorps year out on the Northern Cheyenne Reservation. So I spent the year working with Northern Cheyenne and Crow youth at a high school. And I also was living in a community of other people who were doing my program. There were 6 of us. And it was a lovely community. We would do events together that we called community nights, things like playing board games together or having sing-alongs by candlelight. And we'd also do what was called spirituality nights, where we would have reflections and prayers that we would lead together. And I loved that year. I loved my community that I was with. I loved the students I was working with on the reservation. And I loved the people from the Northern Cheyenne and Crow reservations, more broadly speaking. It is not an exaggeration to say that that was the best year of my life. And that meant that at the end of that year, it was so very hard to say goodbye. So hard to say goodbye. So hard to say goodbye to my housemates and to my students. And just about every day, I ended up crying from gratitude and from grief, from so much gratitude about having been able to have such a beautiful experience, and so much sadness about having to let it go. Near the end of the year, we had a closing retreat to mark out the transition, and it was led by a United Church of Christ pastor, so not too far from us, and it was at a United Methodist camp on Flathead Lake in Montana. And this time was a place for us to mark that transition, to ritually close out our time together, and to honor all that we were leaving behind. Near the end of the retreat, our facilitator asked us to take a walk, to look around at this camp, and to come up with a metaphor for leaving and for letting go. Now, I am a very straight line thinker. Like, I go from point A to point B usually. Like, I'm not an artist despite my art teacher mom's best efforts. And so I heard this assignment and I was like, I have no idea what I'm gonna come up with here. But I was ready to leave. I needed to leave and I needed to come up with a way to honor that. So I remember walking around and looking around the camp, and I saw trees not too much different from these ones here, these evergreen trees. Big, tall evergreen trees. But trees where the nearest needles, the nearest green branches, were 2, 3, 4 stories up, nowhere near close enough for me to walk up to them and to grab them and to pull them close. And I also remember seeing on these trees on the bottom part that they were pretty much clean. The trunks were pretty much clean, and that they had little stubs where branches used to be. By the way, this picture is from Evergreen Park, so for anyone who knows where that is along Babcock Road, you can go check this out for yourself. And as I was in that camp in Montana staring at those evergreens, it hit me. Evergreen trees drop their branches as they grow up. They drop their lower branches, the branches that had once caught a bunch of sunlight, but now no longer do because they're blocked out by the higher ones. And as they grow, they literally drop those lower branches, which were the very branches that got them to where they are now. And I realized that this was not unlike what I was being asked to do. To leave behind my community, to leave behind my students, to leave behind everybody in Montana so that I could continue growing, and to continue stretching towards the light up top. Now, I know that I am not breaking any new spiritual ground here. We have all heard about that growing up means letting go of certain things, especially that it means growing out of our comfort zones and taking new risks. That it means doing things like moving away from home for the first time, or saying goodbye to friends who move away, or being those people who move away from home ourselves. Letting go of things as we age and mature is such a timeless theme that we can find ancient examples of it in spiritual texts like the New Testament, where St. Paul writes, "When I was a child, I spoke as a child, I understood as a child, I thought as a child. But when I became an adult, I put away my childish things." It's also something that has been written about by Lauren Long in Our Time for All Ages today. In Our Time for All Ages, which Lauren Long, by the way, he's been writing books for 20 years, and he's actually illustrated books by people including Barack Obama. He illustrated Barack Obama's kids' book up to his daughters. He's been doing this for a long time, and yet he says of this book, The Little Tree, that out of all of his books, Little Tree is the most personal book that he has ever attempted to write and to illustrate. At first, when I read this, I was like, that is an odd thing to say about a book about a little tree. But digging down a little deeper, down to the roots, we begin to understand a bit more of what Long means. And that same author's note where he wrote that it was the most personal book he'd ever written, Long tells the story of saying goodbye to his oldest child when that child left for college. He writes, "As I held back my own tears, I vividly remembered the day that he cried at my knee, terrified on his first day of kindergarten. terrified. 2 stories, my friends, 2 stories. First, the story of an oldest son saying goodbye to the safety of spending every second in the safety of his parents' arms. And then the second story, the boy's father, Lauren Long, the author of Our Time for All Ages, saying goodbye to that son when it was time for that son to go out into the world and to college. 2 stories. 2 stories, 2 examples of people needing to let go in order to grow up, or at least in order to move on with their lives, to move on to what was next. Long concludes his letter with a catchy little phrase that I happen to love. Let grow. Not let go, let grow. Let grow. Let go and let grow, my friends. Let go and let grow. Of course, there are many spiritual traditions that teach about the need to let go of certain things as part of our spiritual lives. This is also deeply spiritual work. There's Jesus telling the disciples to put aside all their worldly possessions and to come follow me. In the Hebrew scripture and in the Jewish tradition, there's the commandment to put aside false idols and false gods, which we heard echoed in our reading by Reverend Bellatini today. Each of these stories is about giving up a barrier to the spiritual life. It's about giving up something that will never bring us true spiritual fulfillment. Something that could never bring us to our fullest growth. But we all know that our spiritual lives are a little messier than that, right? We're not always just asked to give up things that are not good for us. Sometimes we have to give up things that have served us so well. Things that have nurtured our spirits and watered our internal seeds intended to the gardens of our souls. Here's another example from my life. The first practice that I ever did on a regular basis was first spiritual practice. It was a nightly reflection. It's called an examen, and it's an exercise that I learned from the Jesuits, who are a Catholic order of priests. It's an exercise in which you go back over your day and you review it to see where the spirit of life was moving throughout the day, to see where you had been close to the divine and to see where you had been far away from it. I loved this practice. I started doing it actually that same year that I graduated from college and when I went to Montana, and it became the highlight of my day out there. I felt transformed, feeling held in love as I reflected on where I had felt the Spirit moving each day. I felt more open to the world around me, more attentive to and patient with other people like my students and my housemates. And I got to the point where each night I looked forward to going into my room, sitting down, lighting a candle, and reviewing my day. It would not be an overstatement to say that this practice kickstarted my own spiritual life and led me to UU ministry. So I did this practice regularly, if not nightly, for about a year. But then you know how the story goes. I moved to a new city. I started a new job. I began commuting much longer and working longer hours in a more stressful environment. And I was getting home later and later and later. And this nightly prayer practice that I had loved so much in Montana, I didn't love it so much in my new space. It became more like a chore, not like a treat, like something that I had to do, something that I didn't even really have the energy for, and something that was keeping me from sneaking in a few more precious minutes of sleep each day. I remember one night sitting down on my floor, lighting that candle, and the next thing that I knew, it was 3 a.m., and I was waking up slumped across the floor of my room. And it was then that I realized that this practice wasn't serving me any longer. That this practice that had once been the highlight of my day and that had once given me energy and propelled me to be more open to the world was not really doing the same thing. And so reluctantly, even though I loved this practice and knew that in the right setting it could give me fulfillment, I realized that I needed to let it go, at least for a little while. Now, I'm guessing that many of you have had a similar experience in some time, perhaps not about a spiritual practice, but about some practice in your life that at some point gave you great joy and fulfillment, and then no longer did, or that you had to let go of because of circumstances. And I suspect that when this happened, there might have been a confusion about why it no longer served you, or sadness about having to let it go. Let go and let grow, my friends. Let go and let grow. In the small world that is the Unitarian Universalist world, this Sunday is a sort of unique one. This falls during our General Assembly, the General Assembly of the Unitarian Universalist Association, which is our national denominational body. I'm sure that many of you know what GA is and perhaps have even been here, such as when it was here in Pittsburgh last year. But for those of you who are newer, General Assembly is a gathering of delegates from congregations across the country and even from Canada, and I think we've got the Virgin Islands, some islands, and from other countries. And it's where we do the business of the Unitarian Universalist Association. Often this is quite boring, but it also is where we make statements that express our faith and that say what we as Unitarians believe, usually in response to things that are happening in the world. This year's General Assembly, however, is particularly important. Throughout the week, delegates have been considering adopting a new articulation of our faith, a new articulation of our faith's core values, one that would, if adopted, replace the current 7 principles. It would maintain key elements of those principles and capture the spirit of our tradition, while also adding important language around anti-racism and anti-oppression, and overall just articulating our faith in a new way. This is an important conversation, and I'm sure it's one that some of you have heard quite a bit about. And it is one that has generated a wide range of emotions. Some people have expressed a lot of excitement about the new proposal. And some, especially those who in my experience, who have been around for many years or even decades in Unitarian Universalism, have expressed reluctance about the prospect of letting go of the principles, about letting go of them as the core articulation of who we are as UUs in the world. I'll say, too, that while the voting is in for that, we don't know what it is yet. So we may or may not let them go as the core articulation of our faith. Either way, while this proposal represents a very real change and would mean very real changes for our tradition, in some ways, it is absolutely nothing new. Change has always been central to who we are as Unitarian Universalists. We call ourselves a living tradition, which is printed on the front of those gray hymnals in big silver letters. We call ourselves a living tradition because we are always changing and adapting. We are always reading the signs of the times and trying to meet them, trying to meet the times with our living and with our values. And over time, that means that we as Unitarian Universalists have had to let go of certain things, that we and our ancestors have let go of certain things. First, our Christian Unitarian and Universalist ancestors, we began as a Christian tradition. Those ancestors let go of orthodox Christian dogmas. They let go of branches of theologies that were focused on things like sin and eternal damnation. They embraced new understandings of Christianity, and then they eventually embraced other understandings of the spiritual life, which made us the non-creedal faith that we know. And they let go of being just a Christian tradition. In our tradition now, we are literally called in our bylaws, our national bylaws, to review our core principles every 15 years. We're literally called to review them and to see if they need updating, if they still express who we are as faith people, as people of faith, as Unitarian Universalists. Because we are called to update our understanding of the spiritual life to our evolving understanding of the world around us. So, dear ones, what are we being called to let go of? I want to treat this very gently because, as I mentioned, this has brought up so many emotions in so many people. On the most literal level, yes. On the most literal level, yes, our faith is considering letting go of the beloved 7 principles, the principles that have drawn many of us to Unitarian Universalism and that articulate the faith that many of us hold deep in our hearts and that we feel deep in our bones. And I know that this is difficult, so I don't want to discount feelings of grief and confusion that we have. At the same time, this proposed revision to the values has also emerged from many other currents that are swirling in our faith tradition. Most notably, this is the movement for an eighth principle, the movement to adopt a principle that explicitly states our commitment to anti-racism and to racial justice, a movement that has been led by Black and Indigenous and people of color in our tradition. In short, this is a movement that has been calling on us, calling on our tradition to let go of things like white supremacy culture, to let go of unconscious bias, to let go of some of our cultural norms, to let go of some of our old ways of doing things, at least insofar as they put barriers between us and living into the fullness of our values of love and justice and our goal of building inclusive, multicultural, multiracial spiritual communities. Let go and let grow, my friends. Let go and let grow. This work, as Reverend Bellatini writes in our first reading from today, is deeply spiritual, this work of letting go. As he writes, for religion to be significant, it has to provide more than the comforts of community. It also has to provide opportunities for what Bellatini calls spiritual growth. Yes, our UU faith must comfort us in those moments when we need to be comforted, when we need a shoulder to lean on or to cry on. But it also has to challenge us when we need to be challenged. It has to help us recognize the ways that we have fallen short and tell us that at the same time, at our core, it must tell us that while at our core we are enough, we are loved, and we are worthy, sometimes in our living, we have some work to do. Reverend Bellatini explains why we do this in our reading. For our work as liberal religious people is to find ways to supersede ourselves, to grow beyond our limitations and our constrictive boundaries, each and every one of us. Let go and let grow, my friends. Let go and let grow. Let go of those constrictive boundaries. Let go of what got us here but no longer serves us. Let go of those low-lying branches that no longer catch the sunlight. Let go of what is comfortable. Let go of what we know when what we know is short of where we want to be. Let go of all that separates us from one another. Let go of what keeps us from living into the fullness of our love and the totality of our vision for a just world. Let go of white supremacy culture and all of the phobias and isms, all of patriarchy. Let go of classism. Let go of elitism. Let go of homophobia. Let go of transphobia. And let go of the idea that we have it all figured out, that we've done all the work that we need to do. Let go. Let go. Let's let go of the old ways, friends. Let's drop our old branches. Let go, so that we can continue to grow upwards and reach towards the light, to reach towards the promise of this great faith tradition, a faith in beloved community and in a world with peace and freedom for all. Let go and let grow, my friends. Let grow. Let grow. Let grow. And now I invite you to, I think we're doing singing now, right? And now I invite you all to join in singing number 1017 in the Teal hymnal, We Are Building a New Way.
All four verses, we're running out of time.
Let's do like two of them, three of them, two of them. First two.
Please join me in affirming our mission statement. By building a loving religious community that nourishes the spirit, celebrates life, and cherishes the connectedness of all things, we will transform ourselves and our world. Generosity is a spiritual practice, one that enlarges the heart and lightens the spirit. For no matter how much or how little we have, in the giving of it, we have to turn the page upside down. Both the one who gives and the one who receives are blessed. As an independent Unitarian Universalist congregation, we depend on your financial support to pay our staff, to maintain our beautiful campus, and to offer meaningful worship services and religious exploration programs. We appreciate your generosity and will be good stewards of your contributions. Instructions for online contributions will appear on the screens. If you are visiting us for the first time, feel free to let the basket pass. Your presence with us today is your gift to us. The morning offering will now be given and gratefully received. Please join me in dedicating the offering. The words will appear on the screen. May these gifts and the work of our hands and hearts give power to all we stand for as a community of faith. Please stand as you're willing and able to sing our closing hymn, number 1028, in the teal hymnal, The Fire of Commitment. The words, of course, will also appear on the screens. Please be seated. The reading for our chalice extinguishing is called Keep the Chalice Flame Burning by Adam Slate. Be kind, be brave, be just, be merciful, be hopeful. This is how we keep the chalice flame burning until we are together again to light it anew. We have only two announcements standing between you and coffee hour. First of all, are you interested in becoming an Our Whole Lives, or OWL, sexuality education facilitator? Sunny Hill, the South Hills UU Church, is hosting a middle and high school facilitator training this summer. We would like to have a few of our members take the training so that we can restart our OWL program in earnest. We are particularly looking for facilitators who identify as male, but that is not a requirement. If you are interested, please reach out to Abby Vaughn or Dawn Lindsay as soon as possible. If you register by the end of the month, UUCNH can cover the training fees. Next, I'd like to invite Allie Smith to come up. Our board president has a couple things to say.
Allison, and is Jen here? No. Well, I have gifts for them because we and the rest of the board wanted to recognize all the hard work they've done this year. And I'll just show them to you, but I'll leave them for them. I got them a book, World of Wonders. The Praise of Fireflies, Whale Sharks, and Other Astonishments. And there's also a little chalice charm in there too. So we'll save them for them. And this is for you, Jeff. As tradition has it, I am going to hand over the helm to Jeff officially. There is a missing piece, and that is for you to fill with your vision. And it's also a little bit shaky. But I have confidence that you can hold it together.
Thank you.
You might need this for that.
12 months, Jody.
That's for you.
All right, and as we continue to mark these transitions, dear ones, and move out into the world, holding on to our roots, may we have the courage to let go of what we have been so that we may grow into what we will become. Go in peace, practice love. May this be so.